This episode concerns a double murder that occurred in 1939 in Wiltshire, in the west of England, by a man who couldn't make up his mind as to who was the woman of his dreams. This is Finch's Murders, and the tragic story of the cold-blooded murder of two would-be wives. "44-year-old William Cousins was married to his wife Mary, and they had 4 children. The family home was a lovely thatched house in the village of Durrington, but for 10 years they had been living apart. Mary had taken in 4 lodgers as a way of bringing in money in order to bring up her children. In fact, Cousins lived with Edith Cable and their 3 children in nearby Alderbury. He really wanted to divorce his wife and marry Edith, but Mary was a staunch Catholic and it was against her beliefs. William and Mary had spoken at length on the telephone on the 5th of June, and although the exact conversation will never be known, it apparently went along the lines that his true wife wanted him back and he wanted a divorce. He did not want Mary to stand in the way of his happiness, and it was high time that things were finally sorted out. After the phone call, he had written a lengthy letter to her, sent by registered post, pleading for her to change her mind, and we have the transcript.
"I cannot see how matter how I have tried of living happy with you, and after what I have done, do not wish to come back again even when your lodgers have gone. But you could make me happy if you tried, and forgave me for my wrongdoings. But please take this as final. I cannot ever go back again. There is only left for me one way out, if you don't take divorce proceedings against me. I must do something, even if it costs me all I have got, and that's not much, from your broken-hearted husband. Please don't ask me to come back at any future date. I cannot."
On the 22nd of May of that year, Edith had become ill and was admitted to Salisbury Hospital, where she had an operation on her stomach. She was discharged to convalesce in Bournemouth, where she was due to stay for 2 months. The couple corresponded warmly on a regular basis, but in mid-July things seemed to change. She wrote to William to say that she wanted to end their relationship and be alone, asking him to pack up her belongings so she could collect them when she was discharged, as she would be moving out. William had periodically driven down to Bournemouth to see Edith, and did so on the 9th of July. He picked up Edith at the convalescent home, so they should go out for the day. This was to be the last time that she was seen by anybody alive. Later on in the day, at around 9 o'clock in the evening, William went to see his wife, and they got into conversation in the kitchen. The children were upstairs. 2 of the daughters were worried because of the manner of the conversation that was happening, and for good reason, as all of a sudden a shot rang out, and their mother screamed, "He shot me!" This was immediately followed by a second shot. After an agonizing pause, William shouted upstairs for the children to stay there and get one of the lodgers to come down to the kitchen. They were woken by the children and were about to venture downstairs when they heard a voice shout out, "Come downstairs, you Irish scum!" They naturally gingerly went downstairs and opened the kitchen door, where they were confronted by William, who in a calm voice said, "Take the shotgun and go fetch the police. I have shot my wife." He handed over the weapon to one of the lodgers with a smirk on his face. 2 police constables were soon on the scene to see the body of Mrs. Cousins covered with a tablecloth on the kitchen floor, with William standing over the body. He said he had killed her and that he would not resist arrest, as he knew what he had done and realised that he would hang for it. He also imparted the information that his car was outside and that there was another dead body in it, that of the woman he loved. He admitted that he had strangled her earlier, and while driving back from Bournemouth to Durrington, found that she was still alive, so he shot her. He led the police to his car outside, and there, in the passenger seat, was the dead body of Edith, covered in a coat. Strangely, he gave her a kiss on the cheek, closed the car door, and gave the key to one of the policemen. Cousins was arrested, cautioned, and taken to Amesbury police station. The car was minutely searched, where they found a number of empty beer bottles that appeared to have been recently emptied, and a spent shotgun cartridge. Also found in the car were a number of letters, which were written between Cousins and Edith. But oddly, there was one addressed to the Chief Constable of Wiltshire. It was dated the 21st of June 1939, and said that Cousins wanted to end what he called his horrific life. He was charged the following day with the murders of the two women, and professed that he was exceptionally glad with the result. He had always said that only death would part him and Edith Cable. He had been denied the chance to marry the woman he wanted to. Death was the only thing that would part them. He expressed no wish to commit suicide, but instead die on the Winchester scaffold instead. He was charged with the murders of Edith and Mary, and professed that he was exceptionally glad at the outcome. The inquest was held in Amesbury, and it was confirmed by the pathologist that Mary had died from shotgun wounds that could not have been self-inflicted, and that Edith had died in a similar way, but showed signs that she had also been strangled. After hearing of the formal identification and cause of death of the two women, the coroner adjourned the hearing, pending the outcome of further police inquiries. Cousins was remanded for trial by the magistrates of the Wiltshire Assizes to be held in Devizes. At this point, he was only tried for the murder of his wife Mary, and he pleaded not guilty to the charge. As expected, much of the focus of proceedings centred on the mental state of the accused at the time of the murder, with the defence entering a plea of insanity. The prosecution, on the other hand, maintained that he was sane, and therefore fit to stand trial, until proved otherwise. Witnesses to the events of that evening said that Cousins appeared calm at all times, and his conduct appeared that he was under control of himself. The defence called the family solicitor as a witness, Mr. A.B. Lemon, who had known Cousins for about 10 years. He had seen his client a few days before the murder, and noted, instead of his usual calm demeanour, he felt he was somewhat distraught and upset by something that was going on in his life, and could have become violent as a result. He also added that he did not feel at ease in his company. The purpose of the visit was about a potential divorce, although Mr. Lemon did express the opinion to his client that there would be a very slim chance of this happening. Next up was Dr. Arthur Guidham, who was the director of a local mental institution, who had seen Cousins on the 29th of September. The patient had confirmed that he was very happy with his situation, but would frequently wander off topic in his conversation, and often talked about minor topics from the First World War. He confided that 5 years earlier he had been in a motorcycle accident that had left him with bad headaches and numb feelings in his body from time to time. He also had an irrational fear of having an eye test, even though he was told it was a harmless procedure. The doctor concluded that his diagnosis was that Cousins was mentally abnormal and suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, and that the main manifestations of this were that he did not react to normal emotional cues in the way that would be expected. He gave the example that something that would make a normal person depressed had the opposite effect on Cousins. This would render him unable to differentiate right from wrong. This was certainly the case of the slaying of his wife, something that he felt was the correct thing to do. The doctor went on to say that Cousins thought that his wife had been unfaithful and that 2 of his children were not his, although this may not have been a delusion. The judge asked the pertinent question that did Cousins know right from wrong when he shot his wife? Dr. Guyden pointed out that the letter to the Chief Constable in which the accused had a desire to die on the gallows, he clearly knew what he was doing was against the law of the land, but his mental state had affected his values, making it seem that his actions were not wrong under the circumstances. The doctor concluded that Cousins was completely insane when he committed the crime. Under the circumstances, 3 possible verdicts were possible: not guilty, guilty, or guilty but insane. The judge pointed out that there was no dispute about the facts of the case, but there was conflicting evidence as to whether Cousins was sane or insane at the time of the murder. He had also shown no contrition or remorse. The onus of proof that the accused was insane rested with the defence. There had been no previous record of mental impairment in the past, and all that was really known was that he was hard-working, respectable, and possessed a kind nature. Emphasis was put on the bundle of letters that had been found, and it was pretty much agreed that Cousins was an abnormal person. But was he insane? It had been pointed out by medical witnesses that he was certainly certifiable, but was he in possession of his senses when he killed his wife? There was some dispute between the prosecution and the defence concerning this point, and how extensive was his mental impairment. Would the jury be satisfied with the medical experts called by the defence, who believed Cousins had been having a defect of sound reasoning, which prevented him from making rational decisions? The jury had a lot to think about. He was clearly guilty, but was in full control of his senses at the time of each murder, despite his calm demeanour. The deliberations were only concerned with the crime committed against his wife. Clearly he had done it, but was he of sound mind? The jury deliberated for over an hour before delivering their verdict. It was guilty as charged. The judge had no alternative but to put on the black cap and sentence the accused to be executed. But there were outstanding questions to be answered as to the state of mind of Cousins on the fateful day in question. Despite the verdict, the judge also stated, rightly or wrongly, that he deferred his decision on the sentence, stating instead that he wanted more time to consider the correct course of action in what had been a controversial case. He also instructed that the case of the murder of Edith Cable should be marked not proceeded with. Cousins did not get his wish of dying on the Winchester scaffold, as a few weeks later he was granted a reprieve of the death sentence, certified insane, and remanded to a secure mental institution for the remainder of his life.